You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I'm an audiobook guy all the way. For those looking to listen to the books behind the films that we talk about here on Movies We Like, not to mention all the other podcasts in the Next Reel family, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
There are so many great adaptations from Movies We Like available in audio form.
Early on, we covered Casino Royale with director Matthew Gratzner. You went through all of the 007 books on Audible, right?
I did indeed. What a series. We also covered Room with legendary Dee Wallace and Never Let Me Go with costume designer Alana Mooreshead.
We chatted about Fat City with cinematographer Sam Levy and Silver Linings Playbook with the great composer Harry Gregson Williams.
101 Dalmatians and Bambi.
Apocalypse Now, There Will Be Blood, The Thin Red Line.
There's so many great adaptations with so many great guests, and you can get all these as audiobooks on Audible, along with thousands of other great reads.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time. We have already dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they are so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit.
We listened when you said you didn't like them. So now, we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support Movies We Like and the Next Reel's family of podcasts.
I've been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I've read hundreds of books through it. Couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out. And you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free trial and get your first free audiobook at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible. Andy, I know you've never been happier than when you're sitting by a warm fire, snuggled up in a flannel and basking in the glow of an old-school budget spreadsheet.
It is a special day I can shut down the world for a little me time.
In a world full of applications, why do these antiquated documents and spreadsheets still run the world? And why haven't they been updated in over 50 years? That's why we want to talk about Coda.
Coda is a new kind of doc that brings words, data, and teams together. It comes with a set of building blocks that anyone can combine to create a doc as powerful as an app.
Coda runs our entire business here at True Story FM, from show scheduling across dozens of podcasts and scripts for thousands of episodes, to budgets and plans and wikis and more.
Coda lets us see our business in a new light. If you'd like to shine a light on productivity in your business and save money along the way, check out Coda today at thenextreel.com/Coda. Welcome to the Next Reel Speakeasy on rashpixel.fm. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Don't drive angry, everybody.
Each month on the Next Reel Speakeasy, we invite an industry guest to join us, and instead of serving up their favorite cocktails, they serve up movies that they love so that we can all talk about them. We'd like to welcome our guest to this month's show, Jim Jermanok. Based in New York, Jim is a former agent at ICM where he repped people like Alan Arkin, Helen Hayes, Burt Lancaster, Shirley MacLaine, Dudley Moore. He's an award-winning writer, director, and producer, having created a number of films: the highly acclaimed romantic comedy feature Passionata, starring Jason Isaacs and Emmy Rossum, the festival hit Homophonia, and the film M, a romantic drama about loss and love. He's currently directing and producing a feature documentary about the life and art of Oscar-winning actor Martin Landau. And Jim is also busy in TV and new media, not to mention busy promoting his new book, Beyond the Craft: What You Need to Know to Make a Living Creatively. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Great to be here, Andy and Pete. Thank you.
We're going to talk about your film here in a minute, but I think the first question we have for you is, you're in this crazy film business. How did you come to be in the film industry?
Well, I was always interested in acting, and I did a lot of acting in high school and college. And I came to New York, and for a very brief time, I tried to become a stand-up comedian and actor, and I just didn't have the confidence at the time. And I couldn't deal with the rejection. And then I went into being in the crew of commercials, TV shows, films, I did anything they wanted. I even worked as a gaffer and almost fried myself, but with electricity. But and then I quit that and started in the mailroom of ICM. And I was very fortunate. I was promoted to an assistant, and then I was promoted to an agent, which was very rare at that time because they usually absorb middle-sized agencies and their clients intact. And, I was there for 8 or 9 years and represented Dudley Moore, Shirley MacLaine, Arthur Miller, Ellen Arkin, and some other people you mentioned. And it was a really amazing experience because I could really learn about the business and how contracts work. And, I learned a lot about film, TV, theater. I started getting jealous of my clients. I missed being creative. And people thought I was crazy. I was making a good 6-figure job with a big expense account, and I quit. And I started at square one because a lot of my contacts were much, much bigger than me and still continue to be bigger than me. And the heads of studios are not going to help Jim Jermanok right now. And so I started at square one in independent film. And I've made 4 features. Passionata is probably the biggest. That was released in 150 countries. And M won the Grand Jury Prize at Seattle International Film Festival and the Criterion Collection International Inspiration Award and a bunch of other things. And that's what I've been doing. I've been writing, directing, producing in film, much more so in TV nowadays, and also in new media. I have a web series I'm very proud of called Life Advice TV, www.lifeadvicetv.com, where I interview old people and ask them to give me advice, basically.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful idea.
I got a nursing home, senior citizen centers, assisted living centers, and asked the most dynamic seniors I could find to give me advice about relationships, success, longevity, you name it. And so I'm in all the kind of media, and between those two parts of my career, I thought I had a unique perspective on creative career success, and that's why I wrote a book about creative career success and creative entrepreneurship.
It's fantastic. And, it's great getting that perspective. I mean, you've seen really kind of 2 very different sides of the industry, right? I mean, the very kind of the business-oriented contracts, negotiations, all of that side, as well as the creative side. So it really gives you a really rounded perspective on just how this industry works and what it needs to kind of drive forward. So I think that's a fascinating and very valuable asset to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have to have a business head to succeed. You have to understand the business. And so it's left brain, right brain for me, basically.
That was, the book, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield's book.
Love it.
Is it so great? I mean, I read Stephen Pressfield's book, and I get the feeling that my slightly intoxicated uncle is screaming at me to get going with my life, right, to move forward. That's the voice in my head. That's the feeling I get when I read your book. It is without the slight intoxication. It really is a deeply sort of impassioned and personal sort of directive, and I think it's a great addition to the work. So
thank you. Well, I wrote it because there is no books out there about succeeding in the business. There really isn't. There's books about screenwriting and acting and directing, but there's no books about, okay, I have my degree or I'm stuck in my career. What do I do? How do I get to the next level without solely relying on others, whether they're agents or managers or producers or other gatekeepers? And that's what I was trying to empower people to be their own agent and succeeding that way.
Well, and I just love this idea that your story comes from such a wide history. We see movies about people who make it by starting out in the mailroom, but I've never met anyone who has. Until now, so that's an amazing story.
Many didn't. I just left.
The movie that you chose is the absolutely fantastic Harold Ramis film, Groundhog Day.
It was that between that and Moonstruck, and I picked Groundhog Day because I hadn't seen it in a very long time. Boy, did it hold up! It's just a wonderful, wonderful, magical, inspiring, touching film.
For those who aren't in the U.S., Groundhog Day, I think it's just a U.S. holiday, but it's coming up February 2nd. And the whole idea of the holiday is they pull a groundhog out of his little hole, and if he sees his shadow, we get 6 more weeks of winter, and if he doesn't see his shadow, it's going to be spring. So that's kind of the whole premise of the holiday.
Which has got to sound so weird to our international listeners.
Right.
Besides this movie, that makes no sense.
Basically, if a rodent sees its shadow, it determines whether there's 6 more weeks of winter or not.
That's right.
I'm not sure.
weird.
I'm not sure what other countries would have this kind of thing. But anyway,
We hang our weather on the futures of a rodent.
That's right.
When you say this movie holds up, we've been talking a lot about that. As it happens, we've done the Godfather series recently, which overall holds up well. I'm sort of saying holds up in quotes. Then we hit Beverly Hills Cop and Eddie Murphy in the 80s, and Trading Places holds up, but Beverly Hills Cop for me didn't as well as it did Andy. I'm trying to put my finger on what it means when a movie holds up over time. This movie nails it. First of all, it felt like we've done this movie before on the show, which I think is appropriate for the subject matter. I adore it. Every performance seems to absolutely stick for me. They are compelling. They're lovable and clever and funny and heartwarming, and it's possibly one of I think Bill Murray's best.
He admits it. He says
Absolutely,
he says it's probably the best work I've ever done. He said that. I think it's the best work Bill Murray has ever done. I think it's the best work Andie MacDowell has ever done, and I think it's the best Harold Ramis film. This film, to me, is a masterpiece. And it's a masterpiece because it works on a number of different levels. It's very, very funny, but it also works as a piece of inspiration. It's inspiring. There's something really deep about this. And it's all around, if you could have your life or a day or an interaction to do over again, it's a fantasy that so many people have, Who in the audience hasn't wished time would stand still and offer a second, third, or even 20th chance?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because at the time, the film came out and, people liked it and everything. It didn't seem to have the love that it does now. I think it's one of those films that's really grown on people, and people were able to, with multiple viewings, to start kind of connecting and seeing those different themes that it have. This especially the religious communities, all the different religious communities seem to have connected to this idea of selflessness and rebirth and this spiritual nature, this growth that this character has to really find himself and figure out the right way to live. It's a really fascinating kind of allegory for living right,
Well, I mean, certainly Hindus and Buddhists see versions of reincarnation here, and Jews find significant in the fact that Bill Murray's character is saved only after he performs mitzvahs, good deeds,
right,
and has returned to earth, not heaven, to perform more. And
so
it shows him loving life, including loving the fact that it goes.
It's nice seeing a film that really feels like it has this spiritual message without like hitting you over the head with it. It's not like these filmmakers, anybody involved went into this saying, hey, let's make this film that celebrates, the right spiritual way to live. I mean, they went into this making this kind of this crazy time loop comedy. And I think what inadvertently they ended up discovering as they were doing it was, hey, there's some more here, and people really latched onto that. And I think that is one of its biggest strengths, is it just never feels like it's overtly pushing anything.
I think the mark of a great film is that we barely remember a time when it wasn't in our lives, and Groundhog Day passes that test with ease. It seems to have been with us forever, but it just was made a mere 23 years ago. It reinvents structure, basically. It creates a new framework that makes you understand like other great films, And
it feels timeless. It doesn't feel like it's dated. It doesn't feel like, hey, this was set in the 90s.
That was also deliberate because Danny Rubin, who co-wrote the film with Harold Ramis wanted to put some specific jokes that related to the early 90s. And Danny Rubin, who co-wrote it, said, no, let's not do that. This is going to go on for a long time. He had a sense.
That's smart. It's such smart writing, and it's interesting to look at Danny Rubin's. I'm looking at his credits, and he doesn't have a whole lot.
No, it's very timely. He just wrote the book for the Groundhog the musical, which is opening here in New York on Broadway in March.
What do you know of it?
Well, after it had a very successful run, where I was nominated for a number of theater awards in London. Mm-hmm. And Danny Rubin wrote the book for the musical, and the musical is written musically by Tim Minchin, who wrote Matilda.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
an Australian.
Yeah.
And it's opening in this March, and it's directed.
Do you have tickets?
Not yet, but after this interview, I think I'm going to get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very timely. He did Hear No Evil in 1993. Did the story behind that, which was a fine film. Marlee Matlin and D.B. Sweeney and Martin Sheen. But in terms of his feature films, that's it. Oh well, SFW, which I actually have never seen.
I haven't either.
But you get the feeling with this film, like this is an opus for him. It's like his Catcher in the Rye. He writes it, and then and what he comes back around to is something very. It's I don't know that he's ever been able to capture the heart and spirit of a narrative quite so well since.
He hasn't, but this is enough. I mean, show business is such a difficult business.
Yeah.
To have one masterpiece is a giant achievement. It really is.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's interesting that his original script, the way that he wrote it, it actually started kind of in the middle of the story, with essentially right around when Phil, I think it was around the time when Phil sees Ned and punches him in the street, and I think that's about when it starts. And the story is just kind of him living this crazy life, and you hear this narration kind of explaining what's going on, how he's stuck in this time loop and everything, and keeps reliving the same day. And it ends with his suicide and to him waking up. And then he also learns weirdly that Rita, she confesses that she's also trapped in her own time loop. So it sounds like kind of a strange, different twist on the story, but it was enough to draw Harold Ramis and the team in, and then Harold Ramis ended up doing some rewrites.
There's a lot of not controversy, but a lot of different opinions about how long that time loop lasts. Harold Ramis was quoted as saying two different things. One, he said it was 10 years long. Then he said it was 34 years long. Rubin was quoted as saying it was a lifetime. So, we don't really know. The studio said it was just 2 weeks at one point. But it could be,
apparently they had never seen the movie.
No, obviously not. But one thing I really love about this film is it's rare for a comedy to be, funny and profound at the same time, and also popular. This is a smart film. And as a comedy screenwriter, I can tell you, there's a very underserved audience right now, and that is audiences who like intelligent comedies. It just seems that a lot of the comedies nowadays are just vapid, superficial, and he is a real great example of an intelligent comedy. And Groundhog Day is living proof that it's possible to create intelligent comedy that still has a broad appeal.
Absolutely. Now, Harold Ramis co-wrote it, and then he also directed and produced it. What's your sense of Harold Ramis as kind of a creative force in the film industry? I mean, are you a fan of his films? I know he's kind of had a variety of ups and downs.
Again, he had a tremendous influence on my writing. I know that other filmmakers, Jay Roach, Jake Kasdan, Adam Sandler, Peter and Bobby Farrelly, David Russell. I know he's influenced a lot of filmmakers. He certainly influenced me. I was very influenced by Saturday Night Live when I was growing up, and SCTV, and he was a big part of SCTV. I was influenced by Mel Brooks, the Zucker brothers, and this guy. He did one of my favorite films, Animal House, and I think Harold, he's a Ghostbusters. I mean, this guy's a genius. He's a genius. He's made, I don't know, 4 or 5 amazing films. The whole Analyze That and Analyze This. Multiplicity was an excellent film. Back to
Vacation.
School. He did Back to School, Stripes, Caddyshack. I mean, these are classic. I mean, I saw Caddyshack a couple of years ago. I was laughing my head off.
I think Andy, you're what you bring up about Danny Rubin and the original script and Harold Ramis, I think maybe illustrative of what Harold Ramis is able to bring to his writing, which is that sense of taking something wacky and funny. I mean, taking Bill Murray as the groundskeeper, or this crazy time loop, essentially sci-fi story, and bringing to it a ton of heart. Right? I mean, that is I think a real gift of Ramis is being able to add heart to levity, and I think that makes the writing that much more approachable.
Absolutely. The guy had a very interesting background. He worked for 7 months in a mental institution, Harold Ramis.
Wow. I didn't know
And
that.
he said that was tremendous preparation on working with actors. He thought that was tremendous preparation. But the point is, he understood the human condition. He understood human behavior in a way that many directors may not. And I think that endows all of his work. There's a humanity there. I mean, in this particular work, as a writer, this is a classical, and it was very popular, particularly in the 80s and 90s, a classical redemptive narrative, which has echoes of A Christmas Carol. This man is redeemed. He starts out as a perfect bastard, and he starts, I don't know, after many trials. After many trials, he suddenly decides to be a good man.
That's such an interesting point because, so often you hear, about these characters and how you want to, the whole save the cat notion of a script, and how you want to have a character who the audience can connect with. And Bill Murray's character, Phil Connor, is really just kind of just an absolute jerk. Like you said, he's just a bastard. I mean, he's not somebody that's easy to like right away.
He doesn't like himself. He doesn't like his job. Right. He doesn't like the Groundhog Day. He doesn't like having to travel to Puxatawny, Pennsylvania. He doesn't like any of these things. He doesn't respect his coworkers. I mean, you certainly start off with someone who's certainly conducive to redemption. That's for sure.
So what is it about this character, and maybe it's the way that Bill Murray performs it, or that Harold Ramis directs it, or that it's written, that really helps the audience really kind of go along with Phil and go along on this ride with him, as opposed to watching this film? I mean, we've all seen movies with a protagonist that's not likable, and it takes a really hard time, or a long time, for us to really kind of connect with the film because we don't like the protagonist. This is a protagonist that we don't like, but we're able to still connect with him right away.
I think, look, you can say what you want. This was offered to Michael Keaton and Tom Hanks, who rejected it before it was offered to Bill Murray. I don't think it would be the same film with those actors. I think this film is Bill Murray. This film, Bill Murray, even as a jerk, has a tremendous vulnerability. He's a normal Joe. We relate to him. We know this guy, and even though he's behaving like a jerk, there's still some kind of connection we have to him. I don't think that would be the case with a lot of other actors. I don't think it would have worked with a lot of actors. I think the whole reason this film works is because of Bill Murray.
This is like Back to the Future without Michael J. Fox. I mean, I don't think you can. I don't think this movie exists as it is without the what Bill Murray brings to it. He's just fantastic. Let's talk about Andie MacDowell, because you Jim mentioned that you think this is her best performance. Andie has been incredibly sarcastic about Andie MacDowell in the past. What's your sense of her performance in this film?
I think it's the best performance she's ever given also. Again, there's reasons that masterpieces are masterpieces. Mm-hmm. This is the best work, I think, of Andie MacDowell, Bill Murray, and Harold Ramis. I think it's the best work they've done, and they've done a lot of great things. Andie MacDowell came to fame just 4 years before in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any good comedy, because I write romances and romantic comedies often. You want the audience to fall in love with the people that your couple is falling in love with. So you want the audience to fall in love with her, and we do.
Oh, that is it. And I think the central moment for me when I fall in love with her is actually, and this is a brilliant piece of the script, it's actually when we are introduced to her, right? I don't know how that moment came about, but when we see her against the blue screen, because she's wearing a blue jacket, watching her head her head floating on the chroma key, is so delightful, and she communicates such a wide-eyed innocence and optimism without speaking at all, just in her little wave, that I think demonstrates exactly who we want the love interest to be in a movie. And it's just iconic.
Exactly. And in fact, she has those qualities that Bill Murray eventually strives towards. She cares.
Yeah.
She's excited by this holiday. She's excited by the people celebrating. She loves her job, and she tries to be the best she can be. She's really human. We feel the humanity in her. The biggest goal as a screenwriter is to bring out the humanity of your characters, and we feel her humanity immediately upon seeing her.
When she says that, I always make a toast to world peace, we really get a sense that she really does make a toast to world peace and really believes that, that's what she wants. It's
right. It's not cynical or skeptical.
Right.
It's
exactly.
For real.
She's unlike when Bill tries it.
Right. She's genuine.
Yeah, and she takes this. What I think is so great about the script is how she takes it so well. As far as she's one of these characters in the film who has to act constantly with Bill Murray like it's the same day. I mean, for her, she's always starting at at the same ground zero point at the beginning of February 2nd. With the whole situation as it's all just the next day. As opposed to him, who's obviously been living however many days. What I think is so great about her performance is that I always believe that she's going along with it in that day. And I think that's an incredible, incredible strength in seeing how she can actually go from struggling with Phil in the morning to kind of falling for him over the course of the day, regardless of which day it is. I think that's amazing.
And that's a really interesting point, Andy, because here, in so many films, right, one of the great hallmarks of great character writing is watching the character, what's the character's transformative arc, right, over the course of a film. How do they grow? How do they change? And invariably, characters around them change. In this film, they just can't, right? They absolutely can't change over the course of the film, where it breaks it sort of pulls back the curtain. And I think I think you're right. She's really solid.
Well, she doesn't transform, but he transforms. She doesn't transform, but He suddenly realizes he's in love with her.
As a result of his transformation.
Correct. Another interesting part of this in terms of the screenwriting is that when you're writing a screenplay, you usually try to avoid repetition. And that's the whole thing here. It's built on repetition. The way they get through it is to short circuit everything, just when you think something is going to happen that you've seen before, film gets to it before you and changes or abbreviates it in some way. When I teach screenwriting, I know Andy does too, and one thing you really want to convey is, what's distinctive about this story? How is this distinctive from other stories you've seen in this genre? And they kind of created a completely new thing here.
I like I sort of hang my hat on the second act when they're able to communicate the life and death struggle, the number of times he kills himself, right? And they do it with such sort of, for lack of a better word, humanity, humility, and humor. They I think really nail when he drops the toaster in the bathtub, or he drives the truck off the ledge in the old mine. They have us laughing, and otherwise that's a pretty dark segment.
It is dark, and I can imagine studio executives poo-pooing those kind of suicide scenes today. There's something to be said for letting creative people be creative and make their own thing. I don't know if that would have passed the committee.
Yeah, that's
what's interesting
in this day and age, and I love the darkness. If you have to live the same day over and over again, Yeah, you may try to commit suicide, absolutely. And the way he did it, it's his cynicism and eventually his sincerity feels so real because he comes by them so honestly. And he proves that if you feel it from the feet up, there are no cliches. And that's such an important thing in screenwriting. You're constantly trying to bust cliches. You're cliche busting. This is such a wonderful film because it avoids it.
The interesting element that of darkness with the film that the studio was initially having some issues with, I thought was interesting, is the old man, and the fact that this old man, we get to this point where Phil meets this old man who's dying, and he keeps trying over and over and over again to save this old man, and he just can't. He finally learns that, he's not a god. He can't just always, make things work out in the end. And the studio actually had some hesitation about that sequence. And Ramis very strongly had to argue with them about this is a critical part of the story. It's not going to make sense if he is able to save him. The whole message here is that he's not a god and he can't do that. So it's interesting that there's another dark element, but that is one that the studio was a little hesitant about.
I didn't pick that up, to be honest with you. I thought that he did help make that guy live. I didn't pick that up. That was a little bit subtle, I guess. I didn't pick that up that he couldn't help save that guy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think he keeps trying. Yeah, he keeps trying to do it, but it just never quite works out. And I think that's a good message for that particular part in the film, because he is starting to get to this place where he's just like, I'm a god, and I think that having this sense that he can't always save things in the end, I think is a pretty powerful little moment there.
Well, it brings up issues of fate and predestination, and he can't change a lot of things, but he could change things in his life, but he couldn't change everybody else's life. Chris Elliott, wow.
Yeah.
What happened to Chris Elliott? I think he's still working. I miss him in films. I miss him. I really miss him. I thought he really had a very realistic portrayal of a cameraman. I mean, he didn't try to make the cameraman flashy or didn't try to make him unrealistic. He really focused on making this guy a believable cameraman. And Andy, I know that you've been a cameraman yourself, and you've worked with many cameramen. I thought this was spot on.
Yeah, especially for a news cameraman. I mean, he just seems like the sort of guy he's got the camera on his shoulder. He's ready to just get the shots. I mean, he's out there. I think my favorite bit with him is after Phil drives off the quarry cliff and crashes. He's like, oh, he might be okay. And then the big explosion. No, probably not now.
No, he's not okay.
That was excellent.
Oh, so funny.
I caught the young Michael Shannon in there for the couple of lines. The famous actor Michael Shannon, who was one of my favorite actors. I guess this is one of his first films, I imagine.
What I find so interesting is, for whatever reason, I don't know what it was that Michael Shannon did in his performance here, but ever since I first watched it, his character always stood out to me, and I always recognized him as like, oh, he's the guy from Groundhog Day. And it's such a small part, but just the way that he shakes Bill Murray's hand at the end there, it's always stuck with me. So interesting that he kind of struck a chord with me right out of the gate like that.
He, of course, specializes in many dark or heavy roles.
Just Nocturnal Animals just recently.
And a good Elvis.
Was he? Oh, yeah. Elvis and Nixon
this last year.
I didn't catch that. I'll look for that. That's good.
Oh, you should absolutely catch it. Yeah, he was terrific. Yeah.
He's a great actor. He's a great actor. In fact, anything he does is worth seeing. I've seen him on stage. He's just a fantastic actor.
One of my favorite characters in the film, though, has to be Ned Ryerson, good old Stephen Tobolowsky, really playing it big as just one of the just funniest bits in the film, which just always cracks me up. The insurance salesman, and the way he brings everything to the table here. I mean, he just doesn't hold back at all. I mean, it's just, he is a riot.
Again, it reminds me of It's a Wonderful Life or Back to the Future, or even theatrically Thornton Wilder's Our Town. We know these characters. We know the size of the city, this town. I'm from a city around the same size, and we know these characters are created from truth. We know these characters. We've met them. We know exactly who they are. In fact, when we initially see Bill Murray, we know who this guy is. We've met this guy. He's above it all. He's cynical. He's skeptical. And the same thing here. The insurance salesman. Absolutely. A little cliched, but he plays. We know it's not false or artificial. It's real.
This is one of those films that makes you think, okay, cliches are cliche for a reason, right? I mean, we connect with them. We connect with them because we've seen them before, because they feel like, hand to glove. But look, I mean, his performance in this is, it certainly represents his sort of comic, leanings, but he has done an incredible variety in terms of just his talent as a character actor. He is an incredible talent.
He is. In fact, he's still doing. I think he's currently in 2 different shows right now. He's currently in two different TV series. So he's working, and he deserves to work.
Have either of you guys seen the movie Stephen Tobolowsky's Birthday Party? It's kind of a documentary following, basically, I mean, he's a storyteller. Stephen Tobolowsky, he just always has these big parties at his house where he invites everybody over and just tells really interesting stories. And it's this fascinating movie that I can't even remember where I found it. But it's just, him telling stories and weaving these tales with all of his guests. It's just a really, really kind of fun and powerful film. It's definitely worth tracking down and checking out.
Yeah, this is, in some ways, this could be seen as an art film in mainstream clothing. This is I'm not sure this film would be made today. I'm not sure it'd be greenlit by a studio, this film. And that's the unfortunate thing. Because of its darkness, there are certain elements, even though we have these very familiar characters, but there are certain elements that I don't think would be, they would allow in terms of studio finance. To me, it feels in many ways like an independent film.
Well, and that I think speaks a little bit to what you were saying earlier about the fact that, they're not making this sort of comedy today. I mean, this is a comedy.
Which is a real shame.
Yeah, it has a lot more going on to it. And so it makes me wonder if they might greenlight the Danny Rubin version of the script that might be a little more wacky, but be a little more hesitant to jump on board with the Harold Ramis rewrite version that had a lot more heart and a lot more character and a lot more interesting things happening.
You can imagine them greenlighting a movie like this if they really jumped on board the darkness, and you're reliving every day and it's 7. Right, over and over and over again, just horror after horror. But yeah, you're right. I think this one walks such a fine line. It doesn't feel like anybody'd be comfortable.
That really speaks to allowing filmmakers to make their films, because I think in some ways some of the studios are kind of cannibalizing themselves by just allowing these giant superhero films and not allowing these kind of romantic comedies and comedies to get out there. It's very, very upsetting to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting shift in the way that the industry works now. It's very frustrating.
I think it's been dumbed down to a large extent.
Yeah.
I mean, Deadpool, I think, was such a huge success starring Ryan Reynolds because it had some of this darkness in it. You had it played off the superhero in that the superhero, you see him warts and all. You see the problems he has.
That movie, I don't think that movie succeeds on its constraints, right? I mean, that movie succeeds because they had to guerrilla the thing into theaters. They didn't have the budget that Batman versus Superman did, so they had to improvise an awful lot to make that character what it was.
Right. But I think people relate to his character just like they related to Bill Murray's character, because there's a realness, there's a genuineness, there's a humanity.
And Bill Murray certainly has brought some of that to some of his films after this. I mean, Lost in Translation certainly had a little bit more of that gravitas with his performance.
She's a very talented director, Sofia Coppola, but I think that film would not have succeeded without Bill Murray. Again, same deal.
It's kind of become his thing, like in the last decade or so. It seems like maybe since Wes Anderson kind of started bringing him into the fold with Rushmore. He certainly has kind of taken a turn, and I think it's actually benefited his career. I think making choices like Saint Vincent or Get Low, right, or even Broken Flowers, the Jim Jarmusch film. I mean, I think this film kind of helped him begin shifting into a direction that I think has helped him find a better direction for his career in the 2000s.
Look, he's best in those roles that, in one way it's an everyman, and another way it shows the darkness of the human character of people. That film in St. Vincent, it was basically a functional alcoholic, and people relate to Bill Murray. They just relate to him. They just relate to him in a way that they don't relate to these super handsome, slick kind of actors.
Is it true that Bill Murray is completely unrepresented now, that to get him in a film, you have to just leave him a message on his voicemail?
Yeah, there was a story about Ted Melfi, the director of St. Vincent, having to call, I believe, an 800 number to get him. And I think he has a lawyer, but I don't know how to get. He believe me, he gets enough offers as it is through that bizarre system that it seems to work for him.
Well, and he certainly has just kind of adopted this crazy persona, right? I mean, he's the guy who we hear stories about where he walks into a restaurant and takes some French fries off of a guy's plate and eats them in front of him and then he walks out saying, "Nobody's ever going to believe you." And it's like, these are the stories we hear about this guy. It's like, I believe that. That makes total sense.
Well, he likes people. He likes people. He does like people, and he likes to party, and he likes to celebrate. I know that his son has a restaurant in Greenpoint, Brooklyn here, and I believe on Thanksgiving or recently he was behind the bar making drinks for 2 hours. That's the kind of guy he is. He likes relating to normal people. He doesn't need to relate to celebrities,
right?
Fellow celebrities. I met him once. I helped represent a little bit Lorne Michaels, the creator of Saturday Night Live, when I was at ICM. And I was in Lorne Michaels' office in the NBC Rockefeller Center. And at the same time, there was a William Morris agent there. And we were both talking to Lorne. And Bill Murray jumped in the room and said, "Agent police, agent police, agent police." And that's when I met Bill Murray.
And that was it. So funny.
Who else on the cast do we want to highlight before we move along here? Anybody else jump out to you besides the Groundhogs?
This film is really about Bill Murray and Andie MacDowell.
Yeah. You do bring up the Groundhogs, though, Pete, and I think that it's funny that the funny story about these Groundhogs. I guess Bill Hoffman and Kim Miller were the animal trainers and handlers. They said to get the groundhogs to work well for the film, the best thing they could do is actually breed some groundhogs. What a strange little way to do it. But they took a groundhog couple and then they bred them and raised the babies so that they were picture ready. And they had a couple of groundhogs that they collectively named Scooter, and those were the groundhogs that were in the film. So such a strange way to get these marmots to work for a movie.
Okay. Well, it's very esoteric, but I've always admired these animal wranglers who work on films. They're really great at what they do. They're just great at what they do. I know there's people who specialize, of course, in dogs and horses and even insects, and I admire these people tremendously. They're an integral part of filmmaking.
Looking at the production side of getting this movie made, they chose not to film it in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where the actual thing happens. Right, Woodstock, Illinois, just I think right next to the Wisconsin border. A lot of that hinged on the fact that where Punxsutawney actually has their Groundhog Festival up on Gobbler's Knob, it's actually just a hilltop outside of town, and it's very sparse and it looks like you're out in the forest. And they really wanted it to feel like a town square. So they found this town, Woodstock, Illinois, that they kind of turned into Punxsutawney, much to the chagrin of everybody who lives in Punxsutawney. But, I think the location works really well. And having this small town feel, I think, really works well. And I think they designed a great look for the overall town and the town square and everything. It just feels very small town and homesy.
Well, it's very relatable to all of us who grew up in America and cities like this. And I think it was a very comfortable environment for both Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, who are from Illinois. They're from Chicago, so they're from nearby.
Yeah, so they didn't have to travel too far.
That's right. That's right. And it's important for a director to be comfortable.
Is there anything that really stands out to you as far as the production? For me, it always hinges so much on the score that George Fenton does. I think that it's just a beautiful score. It really emphasizes the romance and the kind of the strangeness of the situation and everything. I think he does a beautiful score here.
I like the score a lot. Yeah, I like the score a lot. I don't know much about the composer, but I thought it worked. From a writing point of view, I was fascinated by the different. And I love to see the film again. It's a film that I want to see again now. I know I just saw it a couple of days ago in preparation for this interview, but I wanted to see it again. I still want to see it again because I want to see the build from him, the day 1, day 2, day 3, if you will, all the different days, the day repetitions. At first, he continued being an asshole. Then he became suicidal. And only at the end of, I would imagine, many, many days, did he decide to be benevolent? Did he decide to be altruistic? And that was very interesting. It was completely, unlike many films that we see, it was completely unpredictable. Mm-hmm. We didn't see where this is going. We did not see where this is going at any point.
I want to shout out Pembroke Herring as the editor. I for anyone who spends any part of their livelihood cutting footage, I don't think you can watch this movie and not at least think for a minute, oh my goodness, what a complex sort of brain teaser it would be to cut all this footage together and keep track of all of the different loops in such a way to sort of build the visual narrative. And I think this is a great film because It doesn't look edited, right? I mean, it is a very natural visual flow to it, and I think he did a terrific job making this film look natural.
I can't imagine having all this different footage and saying, okay, now what? What do I do? Again, for example, what it seemed. Yeah, I get the first act and the third act, but the second act. Oh, what order do I put these different loops in?
That could have been a hot mess. Yeah,
that's a mess, and he made sense of that mess. Like
he's also behind a couple of films we've talked about. National Lampoon's Vacation. He did Vacation. One of my favorite films, which I know is a bit controversial, Great Balls of Fire. I really like that movie. He did, but in terms of the scope of his work, Out of Africa. So you go from a movie like Groundhog Day to an epic like Out of Africa. He's got a rich list of credits here. He's a really solid
brilliant editor.
Yeah.
And I think like smart directors, a lot of directors want to control their editor. They transform their editor into, if you will, a technical secretary. Yeah. I don't think Ramis did that. I think Ramis was smart enough, as many great directors are, to let this guy add to the creative equation, to let this editor really make it better, enhance it.
Absolutely.
And I have a strong feeling he was smart enough to do that. I don't think he dictated. I think he said, "Hey, this is what we have. What do you think?" And he let the guy contribute creatively.
Well, and obviously they worked together on Vacation, so clearly they probably had a shorthand, and they already had a good working relationship. So Ramis was really able to know what Herring was going to bring to the table here, which I think is also very important, is having those partnerships in the creative industry.
Absolutely. If you look at a lot of great directors, Clint Eastwood, Ron Howard, what have you, they basically use the same film family almost without exception. I mean, craft services, you name it. They use the same people over and over again because, again, it gives them comfort.
This film did get nominated for some awards. It won Best Original Screenplay at the BAFTAs, and a number of other awards. However, oddly at the Oscars, I don't know if it's oddly, but it didn't get any recognition at the Oscars. Best Original Screenplay, that went, the films nominated were Dave, In the Line of Fire, Philadelphia, Sleepless in Seattle, and The Piano, which ended up being the Oscar winner. It makes me wonder if this was one of those films that at the time, like I mentioned at the beginning, it really kind of felt like, oh yeah, it was a fun comedy, but really has grown in estimation over time.
I think that happens a lot. I think there's a tremendous bias that the Academy has against comedies. I don't think they get the recognition and respect they deserve.
Although
general.
Dave and Sleepless in Seattle were both nominated that year, 2 comedies, or at least romantic comedies. So it's
arguably less comedic than this, though. I mean, this one, Dave and Sleepless in Seattle don't have any of that element of kind of the second act slapstick that this one does.
Sure.
No. They're much more, in many ways, much more romantic.
Right.
In a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But was that a robbery? I mean, should this one have been considered?
It was a robbery, but hindsight is 20/20. If you look at a lot of great films, they were not given respect.
Sure.
And it's. I think this will be looked at in 100 years from now. I think this is a very important film, and a lot of films that are doing well at the box office, I don't think will be looked at 20 years from now.
Yeah,
I think that's a normal process.
It is. It's just kind of the, shaking things up and seeing which things stick. This certainly is one that sticks. I mean, obviously, those films, that list of films, they're not ending up on the Library of Congress's National Film Preservation Board of films deemed national treasures like this one has. It's interesting how things stick and how things change over time, and a lot of it is just what people might connect with at the time, but it's not something that really lasts. So to that end,
you have to weigh how this is a director, Harold Ramis, and a film that's just very influential on a lot of the comedy filmmakers we have today. Very, very. David Russell is amazing. David O. Russell's a fantastic director. And this reminded me of Silver Linings Playbook, in a way. Because
that's a great comparison.
You're dealing with somebody who's also fighting their demons, if you will, and he loves this film. This is like his favorite film. So I mean, this is one criterion is how influential. And I think this is this director is very influential, and this film is very influential. But yeah, I mean, David O. Russell, someone fighting their demons, using all that humble, difficult baby steps, hard work that it takes, but doing it in such a hilarious way.
There was an Italian remake of it called in 2004 called It's Yesterday Already, directed by Giulio Manfredonia. Which
I don't think it went anywhere. Did it?
I don't know if it did or not. I mean, I didn't really hear much about it, but it's about an egocentric TV documentarian who finds himself trapped in a time loop during a reportage he's taking in Tenerife. So yeah, I mean, it's a story that's popular.
And obviously, we've already mentioned the musical coming this year.
And it's from what I can gather, that musical is going to be a big hit.
Yeah,
it was a big hit in London in 2016. So I believe was nominated for a number of theater awards. So it's exciting.
What do they do for the groundhog in the musical? I wonder.
Is it just a whole a groundhog breedery below set? They just are breeding groundhogs all the time.
I don't know. That groundhog has to check his equity whites.
Yeah,
Right.
That's right.
Well, you can't work that groundhog more than 8 hours.
That's right.
I don't know. I would imagine it's not a real groundhog. I don't know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. It's funny. This film really just became so popular and iconic that the term Groundhog Day started just taking on its own meaning. Meaning this, aside from obviously this whole idea of spiritual transcendence, it also for a lot of people just means that you're same stuff, different day. And I guess it's become quite a military term, as all the troops and stuff are stuck in kind of the same situation, whether it's Somalia or Iraq or wherever it is. They're like, oh, it's another Groundhog Day. And it's funny that it's really kind of become just this term describing I'm stuck in this situation, can't get out.
Which is so wonderful, because that's not what Groundhog Day is, right? I mean, they really have completely created a retroactive continuity for the holiday.
I love that.
Exactly.
It's great that it entered the lexicon as that, and I think a lot of people, are sick of their routines. Routine is an interesting word. People are sick of their routines. They want to vary their routines. They would love the chance, maybe, they would love the chance they may fantasize to change the routine like Bill Murray did. But that's I fear that it has a more sinister, it's a bit of a military grind for these guys. The same stuff every day.
Exactly. Harold Ramis, I think that he mentioned when when he was doing all the press for the movie, people were asking him, what would you do if you were stuck in a day like this? And he said, the thing is, life is really this. This is what my life is everybody lives this life where they're stuck in this pattern. He mentioned how he finds himself in a conversation with his wife or an argument, and in his head, he knows he shouldn't say something, but then he finds it coming out of his mouth anyway, and exacerbating the situation. And it's like, okay, next time when this comes up, I have to remember not to say that. And it's funny. He described it so perfectly about how this is really what life is, and how we are all in this situation where we all have to learn and grow and find ways to make ourselves better. And I think in the end, that really is what the film is getting across. And I think it does it in just a really magical way.
Absolutely. And it may have taken Bill Murray 10 years of repeating the same day over and over again, but eventually he did evolve. Eventually he did grow. Eventually he did realize what's important in life, love. And he realized that he was in love with this woman. So that's the great thing about this film.
And he's kick-ass on the piano, right? Like,
well, he learned.
I thought that was the lesson of the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Well, he learned to be an ice sculptor, pianist.
Right.
What else? A doctor.
But isn't that funny? Like that is the that's sort of the story along the way that gets lost a little bit as we talk about how brilliant it is as kind of a romance. But the message of trial and error, of growth, of like multiple careers. Like we are, I think that I get a little bit tired of the life is short meme, live it up, life is short. Life is long, do a lot of stuff. That's what Groundhog Day celebrates, go be a doctor, go learn to play the piano, do all the things. You're on this planet for kind of a long time, so live it up.
Well, again, as somebody who started Life Advice TV, I love this film because it does give you life lessons. It does give you, you're right, to vary your routine, to learn hobbies, to appreciate the people around you, to fall in love.
Beautiful. Andy, how'd it do in the box office?
Well, Groundhog Day cost $14.6 million to make, which is about $24.4 million in today's dollars. Timing its release just for after the actual holiday. The studio released the movie on February 12th, 1993. Opposite Untamed Heart, The Temp, and Love Field, as well as two greats from Down Under, Strictly Ballroom and Dead Alive. Groundhog Day went straight to the top, opening at number 1, where it remained for 2 weeks. It ended up grossing $70.9 million domestically, which is about $118.4 million in today's dollars. I couldn't find any profit info outside of the U.S., but that being said, it still did well for itself, earning an adjusted profit per finished minute of about $931,000.
That was very good. Don't forget, for a comedy, that's excellent. I'd love to hear the international box office. That's interesting. I wonder how this plays. I would imagine this would play really well in Europe. I don't know.
That's what I was wondering. I wish that I could have found some figures about the international, because this is one of those, it's like such a quirky U.S. holiday. It's like, what do people outside of the country think of this? I mean, I know in context of the film, it almost doesn't even matter that it's a holiday.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
It doesn't.
So,
no.
But it is
I would
one
imagine
of those
they
weird
love
things.
I would imagine. I know that England loves this film.
I know
Yeah,
when it was released.
I know that England because a number of English newspapers like the Independent and the Guardian and keep on writing about this film. And I know there was a 20th anniversary release, and I think Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis did something for the DVD or something. So there was something done in 2013 for this, and it was written about by a lot of the British newspapers.
I know when it was released in Brazil, just to deal with the title issue, they titled it "The Black Hole of Love."
Oh my God. That's bad.
You know, it is a funny thing about Groundhog Day too. Just on reflection, you know, my background is in local news, and you know, you ask yourself, gosh, could any holiday have you know sufficed? And Groundhog Day, the holiday, walks that fine line, right? Local and mid-level market news stations don't send sat trucks out to Arbor Day celebrations, but then Christmas is too big, right? So you need kind of a ridiculous holiday right in the middle, and Groundhog Day, I think, really walks that line well. It you know, we still have a justifiable reason to send a local, you know, reporter, but it's also pretty stupid.
I don't know. Traditional.
I don't know if it's funny or a little bit just crazy, but if you look on Wikipedia about the actual holiday Groundhog Day, they have the reports from various locations since 2016, going back through 2008 of what the which groundhog, and what they predicted. Just from 2008 to 2016. They have all the predictions from all the different groundhogs as far as were they predicting an early spring or were they predicting 6 more weeks of winter. It's quite a list.
Are there some groundhogs that are held in higher esteem in this regard, like who see their shadow better?
You know, it makes you wonder. But I mean, you know, we have groundhogs: Balzac Billy, Buckeye Chuck, Chattanooga Chuck, Chesapeake Chuck, Chuckles, Dunkirk Dave.
I wonder if there's been a scientific study about these predictions. I like to know how accurate they are.
It says here, according to Groundhog Day organizers, the rodents' forecasts are accurate 75 to 90% of the time.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So there you go. Although, here you go. According to Stormfact's Weather Almanac and records kept since 1887, Punxsutawney Phil's weather predictions have only been correct 39% of the time. So maybe Punxsutawney Phil is not the one to be following, although I guess is the most famous one.
This whole movie is built on a bench strength, kind of a C-team groundhog. All the nerve. All right. We got to rank it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, everybody, and you will see our list. You can scroll up in your show notes on your podcast player of choice, and you'll see a link to this film on Flickchart right there. Just tap it, add this film to your library, and let's see how it stacks up to our ranking today. Now, the usual rules, Jim, if we hit a movie, it'll take us through a ranking of about, I'd say probably 8 or 10 movies here. Any movie that you have not seen, that's okay. Just bow out. Andy and I will duke it out ourselves.
All right. I hate to diminish this film in any way, but go ahead.
This offers a chance for some gut-wrenching comparisons.
I don't want to discourage anybody from seeing Groundhog.
No. There, on our entire list of films, there are only a few that we actually advocate people don't see. So every film on this list is good, apart from the accidents that are at the bottom of the list. So here we go. Andy?
All right, first up, we have Groundhog Day or Mad Max, the original. I'm going to go with Groundhog Day here.
I mean, I think it's really difficult. It's like comparing a pitcher and a batter.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
Or apple and orange. At least compare it to other things in its genre.
Compare it to different
genres. Jesus,
get ready. This is not easy, and this is what we call the flick chart hate crime. It really is comparing two movies, but you have to imagine this scenario. You're on a desert island, and all you have is a TV and these two movies. Which one are you going to watch first?
A Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day for me, too.
All right. Next up, we have Groundhog Day or Trading Places, one of our recent Eddie Murphy movies.
It's absolutely Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day or our last Speakeasy film, 101 Dalmatians, the 1961 animated Disney film. Groundhog Day for me.
Groundhog Day.
You know, the Bancroft brothers made a fantastic case for 101 Dalmatians. It's a delightful film, but I, too, am Groundhog Day.
All right, Groundhog Day, or some Ridley Scott action in Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down. Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day.
All right, next up, we have Groundhog Day, or... going with some Spielberg shark action, Jaws.
Jaws. That was a Jesus.
Yeah.
Jaws.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm going with Jaws.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, or here's a very different film, Requiem for a Dream.
That
Brilliant.
may be the worst comparison, the worst pairing we've ever done.
That's a brilliant film. Brilliant film. Ellen Burstyn's fantastic.
Oh yes.
Tough call.
I'm with you. I adore Requiem for a Dream, but it's you got to be in kind of a special place to watch that movie. After I've
It's
seen
not a
it,
film I want to see again.
I'm Groundhog Day.
Me too.
Yeah, Groundhog Day for me too. Groundhog Day, or some more Mad Max. We've got Mad Max Fury Road.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I'm still Groundhog Day.
Me too.
All right. Well, that lands it at number 10 on our flick chart out of 283 films. That is a pretty strong spot for this film, which I think is absolutely the right place for it.
We have one more partner, Letterboxd.com. We just do a straight up 5-star ranking for me. I'll tell you, it's a 5-star film.
Absolutely.
Yep. Definitely 5 stars for me as well.
Absolutely.
This
totally
was
agree.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. What a great pick, Jim.
Thank you for the excuse to see this again after 20 years. I really haven't seen it since 1993, and I thank you for the opportunity. I don't like repeating films for some stupid reason, but I thank you very much for the opportunity to see it again, and believe me, I will see it again in the next year as well. I will.
Absolutely. It is a great film. I'm so glad we did get to talk about it again. So now, jumping back, Jim, so your book, Beyond the Craft, What You Need to Know to Make a Living Creatively, where can people find this book?
It's on Amazon, both Amazon Kindle and Amazon Paperback. It's also via the bookpatch.com.
And we'll have all those links in our show notes, and we'll put them up on our Facebook page so people can check it out. It is really just a great book. So much useful information from somebody who has seen a lot of both sides of it, whether it's, finding an agent, or I think one of my favorite parts is kind of learning how to deal with yourself and your own personality in this crazy industry, and the persona you kind of have to create. Just a lot of great information in here, Jim.
Thank you. Well, it's sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and I wanted to address fears and anxieties we all may have. A lot of creative people are not great at networking or schmoozing, as I call it, and so I talk about how to become a better networker, how to improve yourself in that way, because it's such an important part of success as a creative professional. And I talk about how to distinguish yourself and how to distinguish your project and how to find a mentor, and all the things I think are very important to getting to the next level of one's career.
Do you have other spots on the internet where you hang out, where people can find you, that you want people to check you out?
Well, my website is www.jimjermanok.com. JERMANOK. JimJermanok.com is my website. And people can contact me via that website, of course. And I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter at Get Real.
And then they can also go to, is it lifelessons.tv to check out some of your...
What my web series is about old people giving advice is lifeadvicetv.com.
LifeAdviceTV.com.
Life Advice TV. That's right. All right. Well, we will have all of those links in the show notes. Absolutely. You are all over the place, but mostly thank you, Jim, for being here today. We really appreciate your time.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you for doing this show.
And for everybody out there, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, all those great places, and of course YouTube. And then don't forget to head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and comment. It really does help more people find us. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm off to Punxsutawney.
I'm gonna use you to be my friend.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads helped pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise. We aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.